Somewhere in the universe, the moment you were born is still happening, not as a memory, not as an echo, as an actual physical event, as real and present as whatever you're doing right now. Einstein's equations don't suggest this, they require it. And once you follow that thread far enough, the word now stops meaning what you thought it did. Most people learn about relativity as a theory of speed. Clocks slowing down on fast rockets, light doing strange things near massive objects. That framing isn't wrong, but it stops well short of the actual idea. Underneath all those effects is a structural claim about time itself, one that Einstein derived from his own equations and then spent years being quietly unsettled by. The claim is that the past hasn't gone anywhere, that the future isn't waiting to be written, that the present moment, this one, right now, has no special status in the universe. Physicists call this picture the Block Universe, or sometimes Eternalism. It is the most direct reading of what special relativity actually says, and it has never been refuted. Start with something you've never had reason to doubt. Right now, you assume there is a now, a shared present moment that exists simultaneously for everything in the universe. You here, the moon out there, whatever is happening at the edge of the observable universe. All of it in the same present. It's not something most people examine because it seems too obvious to need examining. Einstein examined it anyway, and the conclusion he reached was that this assumption, this bedrock intuition about shared simultaneity, is simply false. In 1905, special relativity introduced an idea that still doesn't sit comfortably even if you've heard it before. Simultaneity, two events happening at the same time, is not a fixed universal fact. It depends on the motion of the observer. Two events that look simultaneous to one person are not simultaneous to another person moving at a different velocity, not because of bad equipment, not because of a measurement delay. The mathematics says both observers are correct, and there is no third perspective that overrules either of them. That's worth sitting with for a second. If at the same time means different things to different observers and both are right, then what exactly is time doing? Follow that logic, and something strange falls out of it. If now genuinely varies by observer, if there is no universal present, then every moment has to exist somewhere independently. The past didn't dissolve. The future isn't a blank slate waiting to be filled in. They're both already there, structurally, the same way spatial locations are. You don't assume that the city 100 kilometers to your east has stopped existing because you're not there. Relativity says time works on the same principle. Every moment is a location in a four-dimensional structure. You occupy one of them. The others are still real. Physicists call this the Block Universe, or sometimes Eternalism. It's not a fringe interpretation. It's what the equations straightforwardly say. A common misreading here. Block Universe doesn't mean time is an illusion, the sense that it doesn't exist. Time exists in this picture. It's a genuine dimension of the universe. What's being questioned is the flow. The feeling that time moves, that it carries you forward from moment to moment, like a current in a river. That part, according to the physics, is something happening in your head, not in space-time. The river is there. It just isn't flowing. You're not being carried through it. You're already extended along it. A four-dimensional structure, only ever experiencing one cross-section at a time. To be clear, that's a rough analogy, not a precise description, but it gets at why this idea bothers people even after they understand it technically. GPS is a good place to ground this. Your phone finds you because it's in constant conversation with satellites, orbiting about 20,000 kilometers up, moving at several kilometers per second. At that velocity and at that distance from Earth's gravity, time genuinely ticks at a different rate than it does on the ground. Both special and general relativity affect the clocks. Engineers account for this with continuous corrections. Without them, positional errors would accumulate to around 11 kilometers every single day. The correction isn't a workaround for some quirk of the hardware. It's accounting for real physical differences in how time passes at different velocities. A satellite carving through space-time at a different speed has a slightly different now than you do. Its present moment is tilted relative to yours, geometrically, in 4 dimensions. That's not a poetic way of putting it. That's what the correction factors in the software are actually doing. There's an overlooked detail in how most people understand time dilation. The popular version is, fast-moving clocks tick slower. That's true, but it undersells the actual weirdness. The deeper issue is that two observers in relative motion disagree about which events are simultaneous, not just how fast their clocks run, but which moments count as happening at the same time. Think of a loaf of bread. Two people can slice it at different angles and get completely different cross-sections. Neither cut is wrong. The bread is the same for both of them. But their slices don't match. Space-time works on that principle. Your now and mine, if we're moving relative to each other, are cuts through the same four-dimensional structure at different angles. Same universe, different slice. That has a consequence most people stop just short of drawing out. If your slice of now and someone else's slice don't match, if we are carving the same four-dimensional loaf at different angles and getting genuinely different cross-sections, then the events on my slice that don't appear on yours aren't simply hidden from you. They exist in the structure independently of whether you're looking at them. The loaf doesn't change shape depending on how you cut it. The bread is already baked. Every slice is already in there. You just access different ones depending on your angle of motion through space-time. Once you follow that implication seriously, a formal argument was almost inevitable. In 1962, physicist C.W. Reedick published one built directly on special relativity, later picked up and extended by Hilary Putnam, that pushed this further than most people go. If all reference frames are equally valid, and a distant observer moving relative to you has a now that includes events you'd call your future, then that future isn't merely probable. It already exists. Reedick's conclusion was that determinism isn't a philosophical position you can choose to adopt or reject. It falls out of the geometry. The instinct at this point is to say, the future can't already exist because I haven't decided what I'm doing yet. And that instinct never quite goes away, even after you've worked through the math. But the block universe doesn't erase decision-making, it just locates it differently. You will make decisions. You experience the uncertainty of not knowing what they'll be. The block universe says that process is itself already part of the structure. Your uncertainty is real. Your choice is real. They're just not happening in a universe that's waiting to find out what you'll do. Most physicists who've thought carefully about this find it genuinely uncomfortable. Not wrong, just uncomfortable. Muons make this tangible. They're subatomic particles produced when cosmic rays collide with the upper atmosphere, roughly 15 kilometers up. They decay almost instantly. Their half-life is short enough that basic arithmetic says they should vanish well before reaching sea level. They don't. We detect them at the surface constantly. The explanation is time dilation. Muons travel at around 99.7% of the speed of light, and at that velocity, time passes far more slowly for them relative to us. From our frame, the muon's internal clock is dragging. From the muon's frame, the atmosphere is length contracted to a fraction of its rest thickness, and the journey takes almost no time at all. Both descriptions are physically correct. There's no God's eye view that settles which one is really true. The muon lives for a certain duration in its own frame and a different duration in ours, and both durations are equally real features of the four-dimensional geometry. That raises an obvious question, one that nobody has answered cleanly. If every moment of time coexists in this four-dimensional block, what's actually generating our sense that time moves forward at all? The leading candidate involves entropy. The second law of thermodynamics says that disorder, on average, increases. Broken eggs don't reassemble, coffee cools, smoke disperses. These are familiar, almost boring observations, until you notice that the fundamental equations governing the particles involved are entirely time-reversible. Newton's laws don't care which direction time runs. Quantum mechanics doesn't either. Electrodynamics doesn't. You could film most physical processes at the particle level, play the footage backward, and nothing about the physics would look wrong. The arrow of time, that unmistakable sense of before and after, doesn't live in the foundational laws. It emerges from statistics. When you have a large enough system of particles, the overwhelming majority of possible arrangements are disordered ones, so systems almost always move toward more disorder, simply because there are more disordered states to land in. That asymmetry gives time its direction. And because our brains are physical systems obeying those same statistical rules, we experience that direction as forward. That's never entirely sat right with me as an explanation. It works mathematically. but it means the experience you have of being carried through time, of the present moment feeling vivid and the past feeling gone, is, at bottom, a statistical artifact. Einstein himself was not comfortable with where his equations led. That's worth remembering when people treat the Block universe as a kind of cold, solved problem. In March 1955, Einstein's lifelong friend Michele Besso died. A month later, Einstein would be dead as well, but in those last weeks, he wrote to Besso's family. He told them that for a physicist, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. People quote that line often, usually as a triumphant statement. It doesn't read that way in context. It reads like someone working out how to grieve inside a framework that doesn't quite permit grief in the ordinary sense. If Besso's moments still exist in the four-dimensional structure of space-time, then Besso isn't gone in any absolute way. But Einstein would never reach those moments again. What exists and what is accessible are two different things. That gap is where the real weight of the Block universe sits. One thing worth being careful about. The Block universe is the most natural reading of special relativity, but it isn't settled. Quantum mechanics introduces real complications that haven't been resolved. The measurement problem alone, the question of whether wave function collapse is a physical event or just a change in information, interacts with the Block universe in ways physicists disagree about. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, like many worlds, sit reasonably comfortably alongside eternalism. Others don't, and without a complete theory of quantum gravity, there's a genuine open question about what time is doing at the smallest scales. The Block universe might be exactly right. It might be a very good approximation that breaks down somewhere. Honest answer, we don't know yet. At the scales we can test, GPS corrections, particle accelerators, cosmic ray muons arriving at detectors they shouldn't reach, space-time behaves exactly as Einstein described. Time isn't a river with a current. It's a dimension, the same way height and width are dimensions. The past isn't gone. The present isn't universal. Those aren't poetic reframings. They're what the measurements say. Which leaves you with an odd situation. You are a conscious being with memories of the past and uncertainty about the future. That experience is genuine. The physics doesn't dispute it. But beneath that experience, the architecture appears to be static. A four-dimensional structure in which every moment of your life, from earliest memory to whatever comes last, already exists. The worst thing that's happened to you is still there. So is whatever you're most hoping for. There's no clean way to feel about that. Some people find it quietly reassuring. Nothing is truly lost. Others find it suffocating. Most physicists, when pressed, will admit it doesn't feel like anything they can fully hold in their heads, even after years of working with the mathematics. What the physics does make fairly clear is this: the sensation of time passing, of the present being vivid while the past recedes and the future approaches. That feeling is generated by the way a conscious, thermodynamic system moves through a static geometry. It's real as an experience. It's not a property of the universe itself. The universe isn't moving. You are. And the distance between those two statements is where physics ends and everything else begins.